is on. That's the Salvation Army.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Edina. I'm your host, Josh Sprague, proud president of the #1 club in the universe. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all the guests, friends, and visiting Rotarians Zooming with us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you of a few best practices to make this a more productive and enjoyable Zoom call. First of all, please mute your audio during the presentation today. Jennifer Hendrickson, my co-host, will be helping with that as well. Rename yourself in the participants list, as we will be taking attendance off of our screenshots of participants. So you can do that by hovering over your video square, and you'll see 3 dots in the upper right corner. Touch those dots and a menu will come down and you can hit rename. Also, please use the chat this afternoon for questions for the speakers and comments as we go along the way. And finally, this meeting is being recorded for posterity. So, it's funny how a pandemic can make you appreciate the small joys of life and remind us all of what's really important and fundamental to our everyday happiness. In this case, with our in-person meetings delayed for months on end, I think we'll all miss, and we do all miss, the camaraderie and fellowship we feel at once when we're in the room with our fellow Rotarians. And not just at our weekly meetings, but at the many social events our club holds throughout the year. These outside opportunities for fellowship are what makes our club so unique, and which makes the bonds of friendship between us so strong. For the last 3 years, Renee Harberts has been in charge of our social committee and has planned, organized, and executed many memorable social events. Let's listen to what she has to say about this year's presidential theme, Rotary Connects the World.
I always hear people say it's the people, it's the connections that really keep us here a lot of times. And those connections, I think, lead people to fellowship, which leads people to be engaged and involved. So I guess I really think that the connections make people want to work together, have fun together. And if people are working together, having fun together, they want to be involved, they stay in Rotary. One of my favorite experiences is going to Guatemala this year. If I weren't in Rotary, I probably would have never done that. I've been able to get those people out of my mind since I've been there. And it just really let you see the complexity of the world's problems, issues, in a really, obviously you can tell, in a really emotional way.
Renee, I love that. And you're right. The foundation of the impact we have and all that we do is our relationships. So thank you, Renee, for sharing that heartfelt video.
My pleasure.
And now I'd like to thank today's volunteers who helped make this meeting possible, and invite Scott Blake to lead us in the invocation, Pledge of Allegiance, and 4-way test. Scott?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone's faces here. So obviously in the last week, a lot has happened in our community with the George Floyd death and the riots that have sprung throughout Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I was looking for a good quote or something to say. And so I came across, and we've all seen it in the news, I think, but this quote from Martin Luther King about a riot is the language of the unheard. And I pulled up that speech that he gave, and it was in 1968. And I think it continues on, and I think it's worth mentioning some of Martin Luther King's thoughts here. So he continues after saying the unheard comment. He goes, so what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And this is the part I want to focus on. And it ends, he states, and as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. And there was something that struck me about the over and over again, and that this speech was made 52 years ago, long before I was alive. And we continue to have the riots and we continue to have the situations. And so as part of the invocation, I'd like to pray to whatever God we pray to, that there's something different out of this situation. There's something different that makes some type of change in our society with our policing and with our race relationships, that this is not just something that we look back on in 50 years and nothing's a change, but something truly materially changes as a result of this situation. So those are some of my thoughts on it. I pray that, you know, something improves in that regard. So moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance, I think. So I pledge to allegiance to the flag,
To the flag
United
of
States of
the United
America,
States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Of the things we think, say, or do, number one, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second, is it fair
Is
to
it
all
fair to all
concerned?
concerned?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship?
Friendships.
And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you so much, Scott. And you know, it's so compassionate of you to remember the struggle that many people are in. And I wanted to share this statement from Rotary that connects to your invocation today that they released shortly after the killing of George Floyd. And it says, at Rotary, we have no tolerance for racism. Promoting respect, celebrating diversity, demanding ethical leadership, and working tirelessly to advance peace are central tenets of our work. We have more work to do to create just, open, and welcoming communities for all people. We know there are no easy fixes and that challenging conversations and work lie before all of us. Rotary's strength has been our ability and commitment to bring people together. We will tap into that strength now as we stand with those who are working for peace and justice. Rotary will do our part to listen, learn, and take action to ensure that we continue to contribute to making positive change. Thanks. Okay, on to today's announcement. Our TRF Chair, Susan Stiles.
Hi, everybody. Josh, do you have the slides? That I brought. Okay. So I just, you know, we really do like to recognize all of our members that participate in sharing with the Rotary Foundation. And it's really, I think, special when we get together and hand out in person our PHF levels of recognition. But today we're reaching the end of our fiscal year, 6/30/2020. So we're going to do this via our Zoom meeting, and my office will be sending out these PHF pins because we're starting a new year, July 1st. But just a reminder, our goals is 100% participation. Every member counts. And I can tell you that this participation is really growing quickly this last month. So don't count us out just because it's June. Our district goal is 100,000 to the annual fund. We're at about 70. Our overall goal for TRF contributions, we're a little bit over 125. So we've had, our club has been extremely generous this year, and we really thank you all for participating and giving. And again, the message is just, you know, in this tough times right now, we get that. So just feel comfortable with what you give. It all counts. So today, recognizing Scott Blake, PHF +1, Congratulations. Thank you, Scott. Dr. Doug Drake, PHF +1. Again, thank you, Doug. I think Doug may not be on this call. He told me yesterday he was getting out of town, going up to his cabin. Susan Johnson, PHF +1. Thank you, Susan. Kelly Burnett, PHF +2. Thank you, Kelly. John Cardell, PHF +4. Thank you, John. Rich Cleaver, PHF +4. Thank you, Rich. Marty Cooper, PHF +4. Thank you, Marty. Scott Neal, PHF +4. Thank you, Scott. Bob Gubrud, PHF +6. Thank you, Bob. And I think I owe you an email, Bob, so you'll get that from me today or tomorrow. And then I am on this list as well, PHF +7. So thank you, everybody. Congratulations. We will have more recognitions in the next couple of weeks, including some major donors as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. I know that we're well past our $100,000 goal gross, but we do need some more contributions to the annual fund. We had a huge year for polio this year. Our goal was 5,000. We've got over 25,000 in the bank for that, plus another generous donation to a couple other different funds, including the Disaster Relief Fund and a private donation. So keep them coming. And again, our club is usually late in the year getting our contributions in. So we'll just keep making the calls. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Real quick, you can make your makeups by going to the Rotary Club of Edina YouTube page, which has 30 or 40 videos. Our library is so deep now. Watch a Rotary Club video and then email Becky to get your makeup banked. And just last week, we added this 2020 Memorial Day program. Jennifer Benarat has also updated our presidents, history of all the presidents of Rotary. That video will be up as well shortly. And then please join our text notification service starting probably July 1st and above. Once we get enrollment up, we're going to be texting people as well as sending emails out for those weekly meeting notices. All you have to do is text Rotary to 22452. And now I'm going to invite new member Lindsay Smaka to tell us a little bit about herself in her 3-minute classification talk. Lindsay?
Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay Smaka and I am a chemistry teacher at Edina High School. So this is how I got involved in Rotary. I am heading up basically organizing a new program at Edina High School that is in conjunction with the Rotary Club, and it's called Edina Rotary Global Scholars. So I'm really excited to get that started. I started it kind of in January and officially it'll launch next school year. There's a picture of me in Yosemite. I took students there in January. Can you go to the next slide, Josh? Thank you. So just a little bit of my background. I grew up in Wisconsin, strong Scandinavian German families. You know, grew up with grandparents who would tell me to run to the corner and back if I, you know, got a cut on my leg or something like that. I grew up outdoors catching frogs, spending countless hours on a lake with my family. And that's kind of really the roots of me and where I grew up. In terms of my career, after I left Wisconsin, I came for my school. I went to the University of Minnesota. I studied chemistry and German studies. I worked a year in the industry field for chemistry and then went back and got my teaching license and Master of Education. I'm currently pursuing a PhD at the U of M as well. I'm literally one class into it, well, almost one class. I have one more paper to write. It'll be a 3-year journey for me, but it will be in comparative and international education. So that's become a passion of mine. As I mentioned, I'm a chemistry teacher, and I do a lot of integration of global education in my chemistry class. I'm a Fulbright alumna. I went to Morocco in 2019 and had an experience teaching there and learning about their education system. And as I mentioned, I'm running the Edina Rotary Global Scholars Program, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a little bit. And I also kind of created a science study travel program. So as I mentioned, I took students to Yosemite in January, and prior to that, it has been international expeditions, mainly focusing on conservation research. As far as my personal life, I have 2 children, Adriana and Luca. They both attend the Twin Cities German Immersion School, which is right by Lake Como in St. Paul. It's a public charter school. Their German has quickly become better than mine. It's amazing what immersion can do versus the way I learned German. In my free time, love to travel. I will travel any chance I can get. I think travel is a huge learning experience. As Renee talked about before, that's why I love to travel with students and give those students that opportunities like that. I like to go on hikes, walk my dog. Newfound love for scuba diving, which I don't get to do often, obviously, since we live in Minnesota, but really anything that is outdoors related. And then Josh, you wanted me to talk a little bit about the Rotary Global Scholar Program. All right, so yeah, here is the kind of official logo of the Edina Rotary Global Scholars. We have now called it ERGS, a good acronym for it, so it's not so long. And I just started kind of designing, implementing, working with Rotary, working with Edina Education Fund to the final design on the program and then start recruiting students. Thankfully, this happened pre-COVID. I was beginning to recruit students, and then once we went to distance learning, I was able to do Google Meets with students and kind of get a firm commitment from students. So right now, the class of 2021, which are rising seniors, I have 7 students signed up. Class of 2022, which are rising juniors, 19 students, and class of 2023, which are rising sophomores, I have 8 students. So we have 34 students who have fully committed to the program, which is awesome. The fact that we have 7 seniors trying to take this on is great because it is designed to be a 3-year program and they're going to try to accomplish it in 1 year. Of those 34 students, they choose a pathway. So coursework that really speaks to them, something they're passionate about, and then they will do a capstone course based on their pathway. So there's STEM. 20 students have chosen STEM, which I think is great because often global ed gets overlooked for the STEM field. Fine arts, there's 5 students. Humanities is 2, and 7 haven't decided yet, which is okay. Next school year, 9 students are taking their capstone course in the fall, and 7 students are taking it in the spring. So what this means is they will be coming up with some sort of project. So they'll look at an issue that is global, do some research, and then take some sort of action item here in Edina that's more local. So I will be looking for mentors, possible internships, things like that come fall. Yep, that's about it.
That's a lot, and thank you so much for sharing your personal story. I just want to say personally, I'm so grateful to have you a member of the Rotary Club of Edina. You're a dynamic, awesome human being, and it blows me away. Our goal was 10 students for year 1, and you're 3.5 times that. So congratulations for all your hard work and dedication and commitment to this vision. I know you were there early on, and I just want to thank you on behalf of our club.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be a part of it.
Okay, youth service. Ashna Kumar, our awesome Interact Club president, is going to tell us a little bit about their current events fundraiser. Ashna?
Hi, I'm Ashna. I'm the Interact Club president. I wanted to start off by thanking Miss Smaka because I'm one of the Rotary Global Scholars participants. I'm doing STEM and fine arts like combined. So that's going to be really fun. But today I wanted to tell you about a new project that Interact Club is doing during this time of riots and that have destroyed people's homes and caused people to lose their jobs. Although they're important, there are people that are affected in the city. So Interact Club is accepting donations, and we're going to team together and use the donations to buy supplies to drop off in affected areas around Minneapolis. So some examples are hygiene products, non-perishable foods, baby supplies, masks, bottled water, anything that is on like need-based lists of drop-off locations in Minneapolis. So what you can do to donate is you can Venmo Interact of Edina. I'll put it in the chat too so that it's saved. I don't know if you can scan it off your screens either. You can do that. Venmo is really easy to set up, and this is a really easy way to get involved in our communities today. There's no need to go out to the store and buy actual food to drop off. We'll do all that for you, but just make a donation. Anything counts. Thank you.
Ashna, thank you for your leadership this year. I was just talking to your dad, who's, for those of you who don't know, is a member of the Rotary Club of Edina, Raj, and telling him how proud I was of your leadership and everything you've done this year. So again, on behalf of our club, thank you.
Thank you.
And to Lindsay, you know, it just made me think, we're going back to Guatemala, May 2021. Maybe a group of those Edina Rotary Global Scholars can come with the cadre and do the water purifier mission trip with us. So we'll keep you posted.
That would be amazing. Yes.
Lots of places for collaboration among Interact, the Edina Rotary Global Scholars, and the Rotary Club of Edina. So thank you, ladies. And now it's time for today's program, and it's my honor and privilege to introduce today's speaker, Stevie Ray. Stevie has been a nationally recognized speaker and trainer for over 30 years, helping Fortune 500 companies and small organizations alike improve interaction skills, teamwork, innovative thinking, leadership, and customer service. He is the executive director of Stevie Ray's Improv company in Minneapolis, a company that has provided training and entertainment since 1989. He has also been a professional entertainer since his first comedy show at the age of 9. Stevie is a nationally syndicated columnist for the Business Journal newspapers and the author of 10 books. He lives in Minneapolis with his wife and stepdaughter. He learned his quick thinking skills trying to win debates with these two ladies. It has yet to work. And Stevie, I can relate to that, trust me. Please help me welcome to our Edina Rotary Zoom call, Stevie Ray.
Okay, hi everybody. Let's see, where's the screen? Where am I? I'm just looking at my name. There we are. Hello everybody. I didn't hear your applause, so I want to see it. This is how the American Sign Language is. This is the ASL signal for applause, and it works a lot better on Zoom because if you actually try to applaud, then the different microphones will go in and out, which is why Zoom is not as fun as live. Thanks for joining everybody. Today we're going to be talking about influencing others to get a better outcome. A lot of people have used the phrase, the art of persuasion, over the years. I tend to avoid that phrase because persuasion carries a connotation of you trying to get somebody to do something they don't want to do. And unless you have a teenager, let's try to avoid that. And I'm going to try to make this as interactive as I can because my live presentations are highly interactive. I don't use PowerPoint. Never have, and probably never will. Not that it's a bad thing, it just doesn't fit the type of work I do, which is try to build people's skills in particular areas. So the thing I'd like you to do first for the interactive portion of this is you can either use the chat function or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you like at school. And I'd like to know this particular subject, is it of interest to you for a particular reason, or do you have just a general interest? And in what ways do you find yourself having to influence the outcome of a situation? Could be at work, or it could be at home. If anybody has anything particular that you'd like to share, please go ahead and do that either through the chat function or do it live. Otherwise, I will just launch right into some of the techniques that have been developed over the years for influencing positive outcomes. Anybody have a hand they want to raise or a chat? Okay, good. And those of you who have your screen blanked and we can't see your face, we know what you're doing. You're trying to multitask. Let me share with you a little tidbit about the human brain. And neuroscience is something that we at Stevie Ray's include in a lot of our training, because understanding how the brain works helps us make it work better. The myth of multitasking is just that. It's a myth. The cortex part of the brain, which handles cognition and processing, is a sequential organism, which means it has to take things in order, and it cannot take multiple inputs at one time. What feels like multitasking is actually switching from one task to another very quickly. And it's been proven that doing so provides for a poorer outcome for all the tasks you're working on. So if you're trying to multitask right now, you're only going to hear about half of what I say. And since what I'm about to say is just brilliance, you're going to want to come back on screen. We'll wait. Okay. Yes, Josh.
From the chat, how much of influencing involves listening versus talking and trying to win someone over?
Good point to start out with. The first thing we want to recognize in the field of influence is the folly of trying to influence somebody that cannot be influenced to change their mind. If you look at politics over the last number of years, you see that in spades, that there are people who believe this and people who believe that. You don't worry about trying to influence those people because they are what they are. We're dealing with the people who are in a state of mind where there can be an outcome. So listening versus talking relates entirely to trust. And if trust is the, psychologists tell us that trust is the most tenuous quality between two people. Human beings have a difficult time engaging and trusting each other at a full level, and it can go away very quickly. That's just the way our brains are wired. And it's been discovered that trust is enabled the more a person is allowed to talk. The more the other person talks, the more they find you to be a trustworthy individual. A lot of times we go home saying, oh, I could have said this and I could have said that, and it would have resulted in a better outcome. Sometimes if you say something extremely outrageous or inappropriate, yes, you will damage the interaction. Most of the time, that's not the case. And that's for one reason. The brain evolved for the ears to attune to sound more than words. So what you say is not really getting in. How you say it and the tone and the inflection are what's remembered by the brain. So if your tone sounds good, we feel trusting of you. And if you let us talk a lot, we really like you. So that's a good way to start this. First of all, there are two main approaches to persuasion. And we're going to try a little experiment here. I would like, let's see, Jennifer, if we could unmute Jennifer Hendrickson's microphone. And Bob, is it Stalick? Did I say that correctly? Unmute Bob Stellick. Okay, you're going to have to change the pronunciation based on how I just said it. I have that much influence. Jennifer, let's unmute Bob as well. And we're going to have Jennifer and Bob try a little exercise while the rest of us watch. Jennifer, what is it? What's something in life that you just don't like to do? Is it mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, waking up in the morning?
Oh, waking up in the morning. I am not a morning person.
You're not a morning person.
Oh, no. Oh, there's Bob.
Okay. Bob, I'm going to give you about 60 seconds here or less for the rest of us to observe you trying to persuade Jennifer to become a morning person. Okay? Go ahead and take your best shot, Bob.
Jennifer, the best part of the day is in the morning when the birds are singing out in the trees, the sun is coming up. I think that you need to get up and go for a walk and hear all that, and you will really enjoy the early morning. I think I'm done.
Okay. I think Jennifer just told you were done. Yeah, I think this is a clear signal. I don't know if any of you caught that subtlety of Jennifer. Thank you for Jennifer for being on the spot, and Bob for a good effort. The two approaches to persuasion depend, which one you use depends on the position that the other person holds about your message. The most common approach used to persuasion is the one we just saw, and that is conclusion first, followed by the evidence. That basically sounds like this. Here's what I want you to do. Now here's why I want you to do it. Conclusion first, evidence second works only in one instance. And that's when the other person or group that you're speaking to already agree with your message. That's why that approach is used to great effect at high school pep rallies or political conventions. Everybody is already there for the same reason. We already know the outcome that we want. So get to the point, which is, here's what we want, and now here's why. If you went to a political convention, let's just go back to 2016, the Democratic convention where Hillary Clinton was the nominee. The message was, everybody, we want Hillary, right? Conclusion. Everybody went, yes. Then they followed it up with the evidence. If they had started in the opposite order, it really would have frustrated the audience, because it would have been, hey, we know that we want a candidate with a lot of experience, right? And we're all sitting there going, well, we know who we're voting for, so let's get to the point. Or the same true of, the Republican convention, all places where we all agree. Now, if the other person either disagrees with what you have to say, or you don't know what their position is, you have to reverse the order. Because if you start with the conclusion and the other person doesn't automatically agree with you, you build in more resistance. Jennifer already told us she's not a morning person. When Bob said, hey, the morning is the best part of the day, did you see what Jennifer's face did? Anytime you start with the conclusion and you're not sure where the other person stands, you are building in resistance. It's going to take a lot more effort to convince them, if ever you can. And usually the only thing that works is one of the most influential tools given to us, which is the use of authority. The person who has more seniority, a higher rank, or any other means of authority, then the person will eventually say, okay, I'll do it. The problem with the use of authority as an influential tool is it's very tenuous, and it doesn't build long-standing relationships. It only works for that one instance and that one conversation, and you've lost them for the rest. Reversing the order is evidence leading to a conclusion, which is, if I were to try to convince Jennifer to become a morning person and I know that she's not one, I have to start with evidence that we both can agree on. That sounds like this. Well, Jennifer, from what I understand, you're a person who really likes to feel a sense of accomplishment. Would that be true?
Very true.
Yeah.
Very
Now
true.
she just did two things that I want. And psychologists call this the yes train. The more times somebody says yes, the more likely they are to be more agreeable. She did two things. One, she said yes, and the other is she nodded her head. Now, getting somebody to nod their head is no small thing, because the muscle movements that our body engages in signal back to the brain how it should think. It's been discovered that the brain-muscle connection is a two-way path of communication. So if somebody agrees with you, they'll nod their head. Also, if they end up nodding their head, that signals back, I'm going to agree more with this person. So I continue the yes train with Jennifer by saying, and you don't want to get to the end of the day and feel like your list is incomplete, right?
Oh, that's the worst.
I hate that. That's another form of yes, is she's agreeing with me. The more of those I can get, when I get to the end and say, so we should get going early in the morning, it's almost impossible for the human brain to go all the way back and say, no, I'm going to disagree with everything I agreed with you up till now. That yes train is very influential. Now, this sounds like it could be manipulative. and it can be. This is used by nefarious people all the time. It used to be used by car sales all the time. Thankfully, most of car sales is the training is now getting away from negotiating and just here's the price and let's be honest about it. But it can be used to persuade and push people, which we don't want to do because that destroys trust. It's not ethical. It's against everything Rotary stands for, frankly. The evidence leading up to a conclusion is a better way to go for another reason because it makes the presenter more flexible. If I get all these yeses from Jennifer and I'm leading toward getting her to be a morning person, if at the end she says, you know, I just can't do the mornings, I am now more flexible to say, well, let's work on something that is good for everyone. Guaranteed, if I start with my end result, be a morning person, Jennifer, I'm not going to flex from that. And no matter what happens, all the evidence I give, I'm going to push and push and push and push and push, and we're not going to have a good relationship or a good outcome. So either way, it's going to work out better for you to think more in terms of what can we agree on and how are we going to get there to a positive ending. Jennifer may never be a morning person, but she might agree to get up before 10, you know, especially on a lovely day behind you. Let's see. I want to take a moment here to see if there's any chats that I need to address. Okay, good. Good. Next, we have the 5 steps of persuasion. Whichever approach you use to influence, either conclusion first or conclusion last, you still want to follow the 5 steps of persuasion. These are not my invention. It was discovered by psychologists decades ago about how the brain processes information given to it and accepts it or rejects it. And if you use all 5 steps, you usually get a better outcome. Most people don't use all 5. And a lot of times, even if they do use all 5, they will skip around. These have to be done in order. And while I speak, I'm going to chat to everyone my email address. So if you have any questions or want this information sent to you, I have a document that I would be happy to share with everybody that has all of this stuff on it. So you can take notes or you can just listen and I'll send it to you if you want to email me your contact information. The 5 steps quickly are this: the hook, the problem, the solution, the details, the action. Here's what all 5 of those mean and how you should use them. The hook, what gets this person interested? Now that can sometimes feel manipulative if somebody's trying to angle you. The hook really is what is really going to interest this person in what you have to say, not how can you trick them into listening. The problem step of the 5 steps is what is the problem in that person's world? Too often the mistake is made by saying, we have a problem we need to solve, assuming that everybody listening is interested in that problem. Now, for instance, if you're a member of Rotary, you already know that an issue, the issue of polio is a global problem and one that is of interest to Rotary. So speaking to fellow Rotarians about polio is already going to get acceptance. That's the conclusion first, evidence second thing. What if you're talking to somebody outside of Rotary and they don't really think about polio? It hasn't been on their mind. You can't start with saying we have to cure polio because that's not their problem. It's your problem. It's your interest. So you have to know what keeps this person up at night, what is a major concern of theirs, and what is at the core of their being. That would be, well, you know, we all care about children. Right away, you're leading to polio later. The 3rd step is the solution. Once you get a person worried about a problem and hooked into it, now they want to know how you're going to solve it. That's your solution. The 3rd, notice where that comes though. That's the 3rd step. Too many people start with the solution that they already have in mind and then jump to the reasons why. You'll lose people with that. The 4th step are the details. That should be the shortest part of the conversation. The reason for that is there's another fact about the human brain that affects how we absorb and reject or accept, and that is the fact that the least efficient function of the human brain is information processing. It hates details, data, and statistics. That's the last part of the brain to evolve. That's the prefrontal cortex. It doesn't really work that well. If you're married, you know this, men. So you don't want to give too much information or detail. You want to give basically 3 things for somebody to remember, because the brain remembers everything in groups of 3. If you give somebody 4 things to remember, they won't remember the first 3 and forget the 4th. They'll forget all 4. You can even relax somebody by saying, there's only 3 things you have to remember. If I were to say to Mary Swenson, who's reclining on a lovely chair right there, Mary, just nod your head or shake your head. Have you ever bought a house? Okay, when you went to the closing, there was a stack of papers this high to sign. And as the closer went through, the closer said, this is this, this is this, this is this. At one point, didn't you just tune out and just start signing whatever was in front of you? Too much information. If the closer had said, if the closer started with, here's some information that's important for you to remember, you start already getting stressed. That's what happens when we hear information. If, however, the person said, there's only 3 things you got to remember, we immediately relax, because the brain knows that it can handle 3. That's kind of how the magic of 3s work. Now, the 5th step is the most important and the most ignored. That's the action step. The action step is, what action is the other person going to do as a result of this conversation to get us to the next step, to the next stage of the process? Too often, the speaker, the person persuading, will say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Well, that doesn't get the other person involved. Or they say, what do you think about this? Or keep this in mind. The action step is, what are they going to do? So let's say I'm talking to Jennifer about becoming a morning person. I cannot end this conversation without an action step for her. Now, the action step has 2 parts to it. What's she going to do? And by when is she going to do it? So Jennifer, can you send me an email by tomorrow at 3 o'clock, or a text that has the one obstacle that needs to be overcome in order for you to feel comfortable getting up in the morning? Now she gets to say yes or no to that action. Well, I'm busy tomorrow. How about I get it to you by 4 o'clock on Saturday? The action step can be negotiated. It simply cannot be ignored. The action step has to have 2 parts to it. Like I said, the deadline, but also it has to be something that can be counted. An email or 3 phone calls. There has to be a number attached to it. That way we all can relax and know what's needed by when. The deadline is not to keep the other person accountable to the action. The deadline actually makes them feel more comfortable. If you've ever left a meeting thinking, there's an hour of my life I'll never get back, you know why you felt that way? You didn't know what you were supposed to do with this stuff you heard. People say, keep this in mind or remember this. We don't do that. It's what's the next step right now. So if you don't have an action step planned out before you enter this conversation with somebody, you have to figure it out by the end. And either you suggest it or you figure it out together. Like I could say to Jennifer, well, we want to create some kind of action to keep this thing going. What can we do as a next step? And then she can be part of that conversation. And then if 3 o'clock by Tuesday comes along and she hasn't done it, it's not to hold her accountable or bust her on it. It's, well, what are we going to do? We got to do something to keep it going. That is the thing that cannot be ignored. So questions or comments on, oh, I know, and somebody just said this, Doug Johnson, there's always one person who says this. We remember everything in groups of 3, but the 5 steps are 5 things. So that is true. It doesn't mean that we can't have more than 3 things to learn. It just means 3 things to remember. If it's more than 3, that's why we invented paper and computers. So I do understand there are more than 3 things in the 5 steps, but I'm not the psychologist group who invented all this crap. So here's the action I want you to take, and it's related to this art of persuasion. Before you go to bed tonight, there's your deadline. I want you to try the 5 steps. And the easiest way to do this is to practice it when it doesn't really have a lot of consequence to it, when it doesn't really matter. I've done this with my 16-year-old stepdaughter. This stuff works at almost every age, depending on their state of mind. But if my stepdaughter said, well, where should we go to eat tonight as a family? If I started with the conclusion, I want to go to that new Mexican place, and then came up with reasons, I might get resistance. But if I said the hook, which is, well, we want to make sure that we all like where we're going. That's a hook for family unity. And you know, the problem is the last time we went to this other place, the service was really slow and the food was kind of bland. I get them invested in this problem that they want to solve. There's another thing you add to the problem step, and that's urgency. The more urgent a problem is, the more likely a person is to cooperate in solving it. And I say, so we got to make sure we get one place that we all like and has great fast service. Solution. I heard of this new Mexican place. They've got great service, really good food, and you know, all of those things that solve the problem. The details are done. What's the action step? Okay, wife, why don't you go get changed because you just came home from work so we can get ready to go. Stepdaughter, you get online and check out the hours of this place, and I'll go get the dogs into the kennel so we can get ready to go. Everybody has an action step. Now I'll throw in one other thing, and then we'll open this up for questions either through chat or live. The hook. The hook is it's the trickiest thing for some people. The rest are kind of easy to figure out. But how do you get people hooked? Here is the hookiest thing you can do. And hookiest is a word now. The hookiest thing you can do is tell a story. The reason stories have an automatic hook to them is they contain the entire influence process in them. There's a main character. The main character is facing a problem. We learn how that person solved that problem, and we learned what they did, what steps they took. When somebody else solves a problem that we also face, there's a concept that the influence psychologist Dr. Robert Cialdini coined called social proof. Social proof is if somebody else solved a problem doing something, we automatically think that same solution will work for us. This is why laundry detergent commercials don't have scientists saying, here are the ingredients in Tide laundry detergent and why it works so well. No, they tell a story. They have a parent on the TV screen saying, I could never get my kids' clothes clean, but I used Tide and it worked great. And suddenly people are buying Tide. So if you are faced with an issue, say at work, and you want to get a team moving in a certain direction or an individual, you say, you know, I was talking to some other folks that I work with in another company that's just like ours. It's important that there is similarity in the story. They are just like us. And, you know, they were facing this problem of everybody being burned out and blah, 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 and everybody not being happy with their work. Suddenly, everybody in the meeting is thinking, I want to solve that problem. How did they solve the problem? You know what happens when you start telling a story? People tune in and they cannot turn away until they hear the end of the story. That's the magic of storytelling. Have you ever watched an hour of the crappiest TV show ever just because you had to see how it ended? Of course. It's called The Bachelor.
Stevie, can I
Yes.
interrupt you there? We got a couple questions and only a couple minutes left.
Hit me.
First question comes from Rob Breeding. How do you deal with emotional regulation during a conversation? So Rob, feel free to come off mute to explain, but I think he's talking about maybe if there's a heated conversation, how do you self-regulate? Any tools?
Yeah, more others regulate. Obviously, we got to regulate ourselves, but also how do we, you know, what are some techniques it down when it goes up?
You're dealing with the amygdala part of the brain, which is in charge of fear, panic, rage, lust, desire, all the unsophisticated emotions, their reactions. The amygdala, when it reacts, cannot dissipate. It's called the amygdala response. It cannot dissipate without time and without speaking. So the more somebody else speaks, the more suppressed the amygdala will go. Plus, you have to wait. You cannot talk somebody out of an amygdala response. So if you say, calm down, you've just pissed them off even more. So you have to help regulate it. Now, the age will determine emotional regulation. The older we get, the easier it becomes. So if somebody is in a hyperamygdala state, you ask them questions. How are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? Oh, what do you think we need to do to get that thing? What leads you to that thing? If they get any sense at all that you're manipulating them to an outcome, the amygdala response is going to grow back up. So you need to make sure it's a real, genuine wanting to know where they're coming from. And the more you do that, the more it'll relax. Here's the thing about the human brain as well. The amygdala dissipation response for women is twice as long as it is for men. And the amygdala activation is twice as big for a female brain. It came from the fact that women were largely responsible for rearing children throughout history. And in order to do that and keep children safe, the female brain had to develop a strong response to danger and to hold on to it for a long time. It makes them more effective at handling multiple inputs. So a female brain will usually take about twice as long to dissipate the amygdala as a male brain. Neither is better or worse. It's just a product of biology. So the thing that can help men and women is for men not to say, hey, you're overreacting, because a woman is not overreacting, she's reacting. And also for a woman to avoid saying, it feels like you don't care. Well, men can sometimes appear like we don't care. It's just that our amygdala is not reacting at the same level. It's just a reaction process.
Stevie,
Okay.
One more question, then we
Yes.
got to roll on. Jennifer asks, is it more influential to tell a story about yourself or someone else? 30 seconds or left.
It doesn't matter. If you tell it about yourself, it better be genuine, because we can sniff out fake. If you tell it about somebody else, try to make it real. I am also going to include my web address here. I am teaching a couple of online courses coming up, and you can go to my website and check on classes, and we cover this stuff in these online courses that you might be interested in taking. Back to you, Josh.
Let's give Stevie a round of applause like this. Scott Neal.
Yeah, Stevie, my name is Scott Neal, and I get the opportunity to thank you for joining us today. You know, the events of this past week have shown us the limitations, I think, of what authority can do to persuade people. We're going to have to work pretty hard on how we talk to each other and interact on an authentic way if we're going to make some progress in the way we interact with each other in our metropolitan area. The Rotary Club is a global network of 1.2 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change. From literacy and peace to water and health, we are always working to better our world, and we stay committed to the end. In honor of your presentation today, we will make a donation to Rotary's official disaster relief partner, ShelterBox, which provides emergency shelter to families devastated by natural disaster and conflict around the world. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, couple of notes on some upcoming programs. Next week, we'll be featuring Rand Park from the Carlson School of Management talking about business ethics in the time of COVID. Will be a very interesting presentation. The following week, John Kaufman will be flying in from California to talk about his nonprofit, H2 Open Doors, and their work in Guatemala, pictured here on the Escuintla National Hospital roof and around the world. On that call will also be doctors Posadas and Menendez from the Escuintla Hospital tuning in. That same night, we'll have our virtual wine tasting, Renee Harbert's last planned event as social director And what a great way to go out, Renee. It's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime event, and I believe the sign-up has already gone up. And then the following week is transition meeting. I hand over the reins to your next president, Sam Thompson. And that same afternoon, after the meeting from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, at my house, 4720 70th Street in Edina, drive by and honk, pull up in the driveway, and let's show Sam our appreciation and excitement for his year. Our closing quote comes from Groucho Marx. Stevie, I wasn't sure how much comedy would be thrown in here, so I wanted to play off of that, but Julius Henry Groucho Marx, American comedian, actor, writer, and film, radio, and television star. A master of quick wit, he is generally considered to be one of America's greatest comedians. Groucho made 13 feature films as a team with his siblings, the Marx Brothers, of whom he was the third born. He also had a successful solo career, primarily on radio and television, most notably as a host of the game show You Bet Your Life. Groucho said, "I refuse to join any club that would have me as a member." Maybe I should be reconsidering membership in this club. What do you think, Stevie?
I think you're fine.
In all seriousness, Stevie, thank you for bringing some levity and joy to us amid pandemics, riots, and economic malaise. We're pretty serious about our mission, but I would say as a group, we don't take ourselves too seriously. So that's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
As you go about your week, remember that together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves, as Rotary pursues its mission to connect the world in meaningful ways. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you next week. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Great to see everybody. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Good to see most of you.
Thanks, Stevie.